"Hold my hand, Harper," Owen Cade said, crouching down beside his daughter as the wind whipped through the bus shelter. The 5-year-old nodded seriously, clutching her dad's hand like it was the only steady thing in the world. And at that moment, it kind of was. Owen's coat was too thin for the cold, and Harper's boots had a hole in the sole he hadn't noticed until this morning. He'd folded a napkin and stuffed it inside to keep her socks dry. It wasn't perfect, but it was all he could do after spending most of the night fixing a furnace for a neighbor who couldn't afford a repairman. The guy had paid him in a bag of groceries. As Harper swung his hand and hummed quietly, a woman in a sharp navy coat, heels way too nice for this part of town, and a confused expression stepped onto the cracked sidewalk near the bus map. She looked completely out of place, like she'd gotten off the wrong stop in a Hallmark movie. "Excuse me," she asked, her voice low but clear. "Do you know which bus goes to Westbury Avenue?" Owen turned. The woman had this polished, clean look that screamed money, not flashy, more like expensive simplicity. Her dark hair was pinned in a twist, and her lips were painted a subtle red that hadn't smudged all day. "Yeah," he said, pointing down the street. "You're on the wrong side. You want the northbound. Comes about every 20 minutes. Stops just past the bakery. See that blue awning?" "Oh," the woman glanced in that direction. "I must have missed the sign." Owen gave a lopsided smile. "It's easy to miss. They haven't replaced it since, probably the 90s. Can I walk you there? We're headed that way." She blinked, surprised. "That's kind, but I don't want to trouble you. You're not," he said. "Come on, Harper, adventure time." Harper grinned and skipped beside him. "Hi, I'm Harper. I'm 5 and I lost my boot in the mud on Thursday. But it's okay, we washed it." The woman laughed softly, crouching a little to Harper's level. "Nice to meet you, Harper. I'm Veronica. Like the princess from the cartoon." "Maybe," she smiled. "You think I look like a princess?" Harper studied her, then nodded. "You smell fancy." Owen chuckled. "She's not wrong." Veronica glanced at him then, really looked. His jacket was frayed at the sleeves and his jeans had a rip near the knee, but he stood tall, confident in a quiet way. His eyes were the kind of blue that made people pause, not bright, just steady. And kind. When they reached the other stop, she hesitated. "Thank you, really. I've been driving to work every day for years. Car broke down this morning and I thought I'd try the bus. Clearly I need a lesson in basic navigation." "Well," Owen said, "lesson 1, don't trust the city's website. It hasn't been updated in months." She laughed again. "Noted." The bus rumbled up a minute later. Veronica hesitated before stepping on, then turned. "Are you always this helpful to lost strangers?" Owen shrugged. "Only the ones wearing heels in a neighborhood full of potholes." Veronica smiled. "Well, thank you, Owen. How'd you?" She pointed to the patch on Harper's backpack. "Says property of Harper Cade. I figured you weren't Harper." Owen laughed. "Nope, just her chauffeur and snack supplier." Veronica stepped onto the bus, giving one last look over her shoulder. She didn't know why her heart tugged a little when she saw him wave goodbye. Maybe it was the way he ruffled Harper's hair. Or the fact that he'd walked her to the right stop without hesitation. She'd been around men with power her whole life. Men who wore suits that cost more than rent. But none of them had looked at her like she mattered, not the way Owen had, even for those few minutes. Veronica Grant was CEO of one of the biggest architecture firms in the city. Most people scrambled to impress her. He hadn't even blinked. She sat down on the bus, heart oddly full. The next morning, Owen was adjusting Harper's scarf when her voice piped up. "Look, Daddy, it's the princess." He turned and there she was. Veronica, same coat, different heels, still wrong for the sidewalk. She smiled. "Morning," he blinked. "Didn't expect to see you again. I figured I'd give this whole public transit thing one more try." "Brave," she laughed. "Maybe, or maybe I wanted to say thank you properly. You were kind, that's rare." Owen rubbed the back of his neck. "Wasn't a big deal." "It is," she said. "People don't usually go out of their way anymore." Harper tugged on her hand like they'd known each other forever. "Do you like pancakes?" "I do. Daddy makes the best ones. He puts chocolate chips if it's a good day." Veronica raised an eyebrow. "Do I need to earn chocolate chips?" Owen chuckled. "Only if you're staying for breakfast." Harper beamed like she'd invited royalty. Veronica hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I could spare 20 minutes. Their apartment was small but clean, cozy. The kind of place that smelled like cinnamon and effort, Veronica sat at the table while Harper colored and Owen flipped pancakes in a pan. "Do you do this often?" she asked. "Make pancakes, help strangers, talk to people like me." He glanced at her. "What do you mean like you?" "Well-dressed, clearly not from around here, possibly carrying a credit card limit bigger than your rent." Owen grinned. "I don't really care about that stuff. You looked like you needed help." She swallowed. "Most people don't notice when I do." "Well, I'm not most people." He said it without pride. Just fact. Veronica stared at him, something catching in her throat. She didn't know what it was exactly, just that her heart hadn't felt this warm in a long time. By the time she left, Harper had invited her back for movie night, and Owen had promised to walk her to the bus again if she ever needed. Veronica didn't say it out loud, but she already knew she'd take the bus tomorrow. And the next day, and maybe the one after that. Not because her car wasn't fixed, but because a struggling dad with kind eyes and a daughter with a hole in her boot had reminded her what it felt like to be seen, and she wasn't ready to let that go. The air inside the cafe was warm, the windows fogged slightly from the bodies packed close together, and the hiss of the espresso machine behind the counter. Veronica stood near the back, her coat folded neatly over one arm, scanning the crowd until she saw Owen step in with Harper perched on his hip, her knit hat slipping over one eye. He spotted her almost immediately, lifting a hand in greeting as he made his way through the tables. Harper wriggled down as soon as they reached her, tugging her hand like they were old friends. "I told Daddy you'd come," Harper said with the kind of certainty only a child could carry. "I wouldn't miss it," Veronica replied, crouching to fix the tilt of the little girl's hat. "You promised me we'd share cookies." Owen chuckled, pulling out a chair for Veronica before settling across from her. "She's been talking about this all morning." "You've apparently joined the inner circle. I feel honored." Veronica ordered them all hot chocolates too, with whipped cream, one without, and a plate of cinnamon biscuits so fresh the sugar still glistened. She didn't mention the price. She just paid and returned, handing Harper her cup like it was a treasure. "Do you ever sit still?" Veronica asked as Harper bounced in her seat. "Only when I'm asleep," the girl answered, already dipping a biscuit into her drink. Veronica laughed, then looked at Owen. "So, you're not from around here, are you?" "No," he said, leaning back. "We moved out this way 6 months ago, needed something affordable, somewhere quiet. Where were you before?" "Up near Lakeview, but things changed, had to start fresh." Veronica didn't ask what changed. The way his eyes shifted for a second told her enough. She simply nodded, letting the subject drift. "I was thinking," she said instead. "You mentioned you sometimes do repair work, right?" "Yeah. It's not steady, but I take what I can." "I might have something," she said, pulling a small card from her coat pocket. "Our firm owns a couple older buildings in need of minor upkeep. Nothing flashy, leaky pipes, faulty locks, that kind of thing. We usually contract out, but I could recommend you if you're interested." Owen looked down at the card, then back at her. He didn't hide his surprise. "You do that? You helped me," she said simply. "Seems fair." He turned the card over in his fingers. "What kind of firm is it?" "Architecture and development. We work on restorations, design plans, commercial property upgrades. I handle the upper-level logistics." "So you're in management," her lips curved. "I run the company." Owen blinked. "You're serious?" "I am." He let out a low whistle. "Guess I owe Harper another chocolate chip pancake for introducing me to a CEO. "You don't owe me anything," Veronica said, "but I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job that needs doing." "I can respect that." Harper was too busy licking whipped cream off her cup to notice the shift in tone. But Veronica felt it, the line they'd just crossed. This was no longer a chance meeting. It was something beginning. "You okay with tools and electrical systems?" she asked. "I've worked on everything from water heaters to rooftop vents. I'm licensed, and I know how to keep things running without cutting corners." "Good," she said, taking a sip of her drink. "Because we don't cut corners either." They left the cafe an hour later, Harper carrying a cookie wrapped in a napkin and Owen with Veronica's card tucked into his wallet. As they reached the crosswalk, she paused. "I'll have my assistant forward the building addresses," she said. "You can take a look, let me know if anything's outside your scope." "You sure about this?" he asked, watching her closely. "I wouldn't have offered otherwise." "Then yeah," he said. "I'm in." She nodded once and turned to go, but just as she stepped off the curb, he called after her, "Veronica." She looked back. "Thanks for thinking of me." "I haven't stopped." That night, Veronica sat in her office, the city glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. Her assistant had already sent the email, and Owen had replied with a list of tools he'd need and a request for access times. Efficient, professional, but she kept returning to the way he'd looked at her across that cafe table, like he was trying to understand her, not impress her. She didn't get that often. She glanced down at her phone, then back at the window, her thoughts drifting to cinnamon biscuits and a little girl who called her a princess without hesitation. She didn't know where this was going, but for the first time in a long while, she wanted to find out. By the end of the week, Owen had completed 2 maintenance projects for Veronica's firm, one in a converted warehouse-turned-artist loft, the other in a brownstone with ancient plumbing. He hadn't expected much beyond the work itself, but each time he showed up, someone from the firm handed him a typed checklist, clear access codes, and a thermos of coffee with his name written on the lid in neat, looping handwriting, not Veronica's handwriting, but someone she'd clearly instructed. He didn't ask questions. He just did the work and kept things moving. Still, she lingered in his thoughts more than he cared to admit. There was a moment when he was tightening a stubborn pipe under a sink that he realized her name had stayed in his mind longer than most things lately. On Saturday afternoon, she showed up again, not at the bus stop, not at the buildings, at his door. Harper had just spilled flour on the counter, and Owen was in a t-shirt that had paint on one sleeve and a hole near the side seam. He opened the door with one hand, drying the other on a dish towel. Veronica stood there in jeans and a soft gray sweater, holding a paper bag and a bottle of juice. "I brought lunch," she said, lifting the bag slightly. "Assuming you're not allergic to olives." His brow lifted. "You tracked down my apartment to bring olives." "No," she said, stepping inside after he moved aside. "I came to talk. The olives are a peace offering. You've been avoiding me." "I've been working," he said, setting the towel down. "And I didn't think a CEO had time for lunch drop-offs." "I don't," she said, "but I made time." Harper peeked around the corner, her face lighting up. "You came back," Veronica smiled. "I did. I missed your stories." Harper skipped over and tugged her toward the table, already chatting about a squirrel she'd seen on the fire escape. Owen grabbed a second chair, pulling it out without comment. Veronica sat down and unpacked the bag, a container of pasta, toasted bread wrapped in foil, and lemon soda. He sat across from her, arms folded. "So what's this really about?" Veronica glanced at Harper, who was now humming as she spread peanut butter on crackers. Then she met Owen's eyes. "I got offered a contract in London," she said. He blinked. "Is that supposed to be your way of saying goodbye?" "No," she said. "It's my way of saying I turned it down." He stared at her. "Why?" "Because I started looking forward to the bus, and cinnamon biscuits. And a little girl who calls me a princess even when I'm wearing sneakers." Owen didn't speak right away. Then he leaned back, his gaze steady. "You turned down an international contract for this." "I turned it down because I realized I've been so focused on climbing higher, I stopped noticing what was around me. You made me stop. You reminded me that kindness doesn't come with a price tag." He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "That's a hell of a reason." "There's more," she said, "but I wasn't sure if I should say it." "Try me." Veronica hesitated, then drew in a breath. "I like you, Owen, not out of pity, not because you helped me. I like the way you look at the world. The way you treat your daughter like she's the center of the universe. And I like the way you talk to me like I'm just a person, not a headline." Owen didn't answer right away. Then he pulled the bread from the foil, broke it in half, and passed her a piece. "I haven't dated anyone since Harper's mom," he said, "and that didn't end well." "I'm not asking for anything complicated," Veronica said, "just honesty." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I can do that." She looked down at the bread in her hand. "This is really good." Owen smiled, but it was quiet. "It's from the bakery down the street. They only make it on Saturdays. I think I'll start reserving my Saturdays." Harper interrupted then, holding up a drawing. "I made this for you." Veronica took it carefully. It was a crayon sketch of 3 stick figures, a tall one with long dark hair, one with short hair and a beard, and a tiny one between them with a crown. "You gave yourself a crown." Veronica asked. No, Harper said. That's you. Owen's breath caught. Veronica looked up at him, her fingers tightening on the paper. I think she's trying to tell us something, she said. He pushed a strand of hair from Harper's forehead and kissed the top of her head. Yeah, he said softly. I think she is. The rain came down in sheets, washing the city in silver and shadow. Owen locked the apartment door behind him, balancing Harper's backpack on one shoulder and a folded paper towel wrapped sandwich in his free hand. Harper had a play date with the downstairs neighbor's daughter, and for once, Owen had a few hours to breathe. He headed toward the building Veronica had asked him to look at last week, an old bookstore her firm had recently acquired. She'd said it might need structural evaluation before they could begin renovations. But when he arrived, the door wasn't padlocked like he expected. It was propped open, a soft golden glow spilling onto the wet pavement. Inside, the space was hushed and warm. The scent of old pages lingered in the air, blending with something citrusy and clean. Veronica stood near the back, her hair tied in a loose knot, sleeves rolled up, sorting through a stack of blueprints on a long wooden counter. You didn't mention you'd be here, Owen said, stepping inside. I wanted to see it for myself, she replied without looking up. It was my grandfather's favorite shop. He used to bring me here every Sunday. Owen walked over, glancing at the plans. You're not planning to gut it, are you? No, she said. Just reinforce the foundation and restore the windows. I want to keep the character. It's rare these days. He leaned an elbow on the counter. You brought me here to work or for something else? Veronica looked at him then, something soft and uncertain flickering in her eyes. I brought you here because I wanted to show you a piece of myself. You've let me into your world, your home, your daughter's life, but I haven't shown you much of mine. Owen studied her for a long moment. I don't need proof of who you are, Veronica. I already know. But do you? She asked, folding the blueprints carefully. Because sometimes I wonder if I even do. I've spent so many years building things for everyone else, clients, investors, the board. I forgot what it felt like to build something just because I loved it. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that the air between them shifted. Then start here, with this, with something that matters to you. She looked down, then slowly handed him a folded envelope. I signed off on a contract this morning. Not the London one, something local. Smaller, it frees up time. I'm restructuring. You're stepping down, I'm stepping aside. I'll still oversee projects, but I'm not running the day-to-day anymore. He opened the envelope, scanning the document briefly. You're serious. I've never been more. Owen set the envelope aside and reached for her hand. What about Harper? What about me? That's the part I'm most sure of, she said. I want to be in your lives, not just for the fun moments, all of it, even the messy parts. Especially those. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain pattered steadily above, soft and rhythmic against the skylight. Owen's hand tightened around hers. I don't have much to offer, he said, voice low. No trust funds, no vacation homes. Just a girl with a big heart and a dad who's figuring things out as he goes. Veronica stepped closer. You gave me more than anyone else ever has. You gave me honesty. You gave me a reason to slow down, he exhaled. You're not afraid of what this looks like. You the woman who could buy a penthouse with a check and me. No, she said. Because the only thing I've ever really wanted is someone who sees me. You did. From the very first moment, before you knew my name, before I told you who I was. Owen leaned down, brushing his lips against her forehead. Come home with me. She looked up, eyes shining. What about Harper? She's already drawing pictures of you in crowns. You think you're not part of her world. You're stitched into it. That evening, the three of them sat on the couch, popcorn between them and a stack of books Harper insisted they read aloud. Veronica curled her feet under her, one arm draped across the back of the couch, fingers brushing Owen's shoulder as he read in a dramatic voice that made Harper squeal with laughter. Later, after Harper had fallen asleep between them mid-story, Owen looked over. She's never slept this easily around anyone else. Veronica traced a finger along the edge of the blanket. Maybe she knows that I'm staying. He kissed her then, slow and certain, not rushed, not uncertain, a promise. Weeks passed. Veronica kept her word. She restructured her role, made space for mornings of pancake flipping and school drop-offs. for rainy Saturdays filled with blanket forts and storybooks. She moved into the building next door, knocking down a wall between the two units so Harper could run back and forth with ease. It wasn't a palace, but it was theirs. One afternoon, Harper came out of her room in a sparkly plastic tiara, looking deadly serious. "Since you're the princess," she said to Veronica, "you have to marry Daddy." Owen nearly choked on his coffee. Veronica raised an eyebrow. "Is that a royal decree?" Harper nodded solemnly. "I already drew the invitations." Owen looked over at Veronica, who was trying not to laugh. "Guess we're outvoted." She leaned in, brushing his cheek with her lips. "I've had worse proposals." The wedding was small, just family, a few close friends, and the downstairs neighbors who'd become part of their extended circle. Veronica wore a simple dress, Harper carried a basket of wildflowers, and Owen stood at the altar with his heart in his throat. When they said their vows, they didn't talk about riches or fairy tales. They talked about pancakes and bus stops. About the moment a stranger reached out and changed everything. And when Harper yelled, "You may kiss the princess," louder than the efficient, no one even tried to hold back their laughter. Afterward, as the three of them danced barefoot in their small living room, Owen whispered into Veronica's ear, "I used to wonder if I'd ever have more than scraped together days and quiet nights. Then you showed up at a broken bus stop in heels that didn't belong there." Veronica smiled, resting her head against his chest. "And you pointed me in the right direction." The scent of peaches and sunlight drifted through the open windows as Veronica adjusted the tablecloth on the long wooden table now nestled in the courtyard between her unit and Owen's. Harper was kneeling on a chair, carefully arranging mismatched napkin rings shaped like animals, one of her recent obsessions. A wicker basket of fresh flowers sat in the center, gathered from the rooftop garden the three of them had planted just weeks ago. "Daddy says you're better at surprises than him," Harper said, placing a tiny ceramic llama at Veronica's spot. "That's only because he gives away the secret halfway through," Veronica replied, tying the final ribbon around a rolled menu. "But I think he's getting better." Harper's eyes sparkled. "Did you tell him about the thing you're doing?" "Not yet. It's a surprise for him too." Owen returned from the corner market carrying a brown paper bag under one arm and a fresh baguette in the other. He handed Harper a small tin of marzipan candies she'd begged for last week, then leaned in and kissed Veronica's temple without speaking. She leaned into him naturally, their rhythm now effortless. As they set the food out, grilled vegetables, lemon herb chicken, and a chilled bottle of sparkling white grape juice, Veronica took a deep breath and tapped her glass with the back of her fork. "I know this started as our normal Friday dinner," she said, "but I wanted to mark something important." Owen raised an eyebrow as he passed her the salad tongs. "What's that?" She reached into the woven bag by her chair and pulled out a folder, laying it flat in front of him. "That's the final proposal for the community renovation grant we applied for. It was approved. The old bookstore is going to become the city's first creative arts and trades center. Construction starts in 4 weeks," he blinked. "You're serious?" "I'm naming it after your mother," she said. "You told me once she taught you how to hold a wrench before you could spell your name. I thought it was fitting." Owen didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was thick. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," she said. "You've given me something I never knew I needed: roots. A life that isn't measured by stock reports or square footage. This center is for people like you, people who build things with their hands and their hearts." He reached across the table and laced his fingers through hers. "You're something else, you know that. I'm just in love with a man who fixes broken boilers and still remembers how to make his daughter laugh when she's overtired." Harper popped a grape into her mouth and mumbled, "You both talk too much." They laughed. The kind of laughter that came from being full of food, of love, of moments that stitched themselves into memory without trying. After dinner, they cleared the table together. Harper was already in her pajamas, flopped across the couch with a book open on her chest, when Owen found Veronica in the kitchen rinsing the last of the dishes. He dried his hands on a tea towel and leaned against the counter, watching her quietly. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "The pace. The pressure. The boardrooms." She turned, resting her hip against the sink. "Sometimes, but not the way you'd think. I miss the illusion of control, but I've learned that real control comes from choosing what matters. And I choose this. He stepped toward her and placed a velvet ring box in her hand, her breath caught. I've been carrying this around for weeks, he said, waiting for the right moment. Then I realized every moment with you feels right. She opened it slowly. Inside was a simple gold ring, the band engraved with tiny waves curling around a tiny, pale blue sapphire. It's not what you're used to. I know, she cut him off with a kiss so soft and certain that the words dissolved between them. It's exactly what I never knew I wanted, she whispered. He dropped to one knee anyway, even though the proposal had already been made in every kiss, every shared morning, every bedtime story read aloud together. Marry me, Veronica, for real this time, not because Harper told us to, not because it's convenient. But because I can't imagine another day without you, she nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Harper peeked around the corner, clutching her stuffed bear. Are you crying because you're happy or because Daddy bought the wrong ring? Veronica laughed through her tears. Happy, definitely happy. Harper walked in and took both their hands, pulling them toward the couch. Then come sit. We're a family now. Families stick together for movie night. Years later, the courtyard still bloomed with the flowers from that first rooftop garden. The community center buzzed with life, people learning to weld, paint, bake, and rebuild. Harper grew taller, bolder, and more curious by the day. Veronica continued to consult for her firm, but only on projects she believed in. Owen became the unofficial heart of the neighborhood, the man everyone called when a pipe burst or a light flickered or a heart needed mending. They never moved away. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't need to. Everything they had ever wanted was already there. On their anniversary each year, they returned to that courtyard table, lit by string lights and laughter, surrounded by people who'd become extensions of their family. They never forgot how it started with a broken boot, a forgotten bus schedule, and a stranger who offered help without asking for anything in return. And that made it everything.